Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. 2 tornadoes touched down last week at the same time, according to investigators in the area. The update comes as residents continue to clean up. Plus an update tonight on the salt mine strike. After 192 days on the picket line, union members have ratified a new deal. And one Windsor woman recounts traveling to Washington to listen to Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Today marks the 60th anniversary of that historic moment. It's been confirmed 2 tornadoes touched down in parts of Windsor and Essex County last Thursday. That storm caused some widespread damage across the region. And as Dale Molnar explains, that storm, along with the flooding the night before, is still being felt by residents.
This barn on County Road 42 and the one across the street were both hit by a tornado that tracked from Tecumseh to Lakeshore. And this is just some of the damage from that second tornado. It tracked from LaSalle to South Windsor along the Huron Church corridor.
One was an EF0 tornado in the West Windsor area, and it had about a 12-kilometer track. The other that occurred exactly at the same time was an EF1 tornado that started in Tecumseh, went into Lakeshore, again, down to the south-southeast with the leading edge of that storm. And, it was a bit more intense with that particular tornado, winds to 145 kilometers per hour.
Pictures posted on social media allowed them to plot the different locations of the damage and create 2 maps that showed the track of the tornadoes.
There were no pictures of the tornadoes, and it wasn't until that we started putting together all of the different tornado reports that we could see that they were in narrow lines coming down from the north-northwest and aligned with rotation on radar.
Sills says while tornado activity is down around the rest of the country, Windsor and Ottawa are actually seeing more than usual this year.
So you guys are kind of competing in this competition no one wants to win on the number of tornadoes right in your area.
Meanwhile, the pain still continues in Essex County from last week's rain event that dumped about 190 millimeters of rain on the area. The owners of this horse farm near Totem had to act fast during the storm to help their horses that were standing in a foot of water.
We brought in new stall mats and that wasn't going to work, so we decided to bring manure from the back pile and build up their stalls so they'd be standing above water.
The Meloche family is also putting on an addition to their house, and some forms had to be removed to drain the water. Damage was also done to items in the barn and the hay. They aren't sure if they will be able to harvest the hay field before it's no good. Meloche is wondering why this happened, considering they are paying a surcharge for a new drain in Kingsville.
The township has said that they're doing like a new drain, which we had some added thing to our taxes that they're going to try and, alleviate some of these issues, but nothing's happened so far.
CBC has reached out to the town of Kingsville for comment and are awaiting a response. Meanwhile, the mayor and other officials in Essex will be meeting Thursday to discuss future plans to deal with disasters like this. They are also waiting on a response from the province on any possible funding to help with the flood. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
And there's still a lot of cleanup happening in the areas where the 2 tornadoes touched down, with many neighbors sharing what they remember leading up to the storm.
Thursday night about 10:30, I was just in bed and I heard rumbling over the house that sounded like a train literally going over the house, and it shook the whole house.
Out of nowhere. The evening was beautiful. We had been sitting outside till about 10 o'clock, and all of a sudden got tired, went to bed, and 10:35 around is when I think it hit. And like I say, just lifted the roof up a little bit, laid it back down, so thank God it didn't take it away.
The tornadoes that hit our region saw wind speeds up to 145 kilometers an hour. The Northern Tornadoes Project from Western University assesses these weather events and say they received 100 reports of damage from those affected areas. Well, here are some interesting odds for you. Those tornadoes hit last Thursday on August 24th. Well, 7 years ago on that exact same day, a twister touched down in Windsor and LaSalle. 3 people were injured. Power was out for thousands, and 15 homes were so badly damaged, residents were forced to stay with friends and family. A lot of that damage happening on Liberty Road. The tornado was considered an EF2. Well, after more than 6 months of walking the picket lines, Windsor salt workers have ended their strike. The contentious labor dispute came in an end yesterday. That's when members of Unifor Local 1959 and Local 240 ratified the latest agreement negotiated with the company. President of Local 240, Jody Nesbitt, says it's been a difficult journey.
It definitely was a huge impact on many people's lives. Some people did have to go get alternate jobs. Some people would do the picketing and go work. Some people had to sell homes, but they were willing to do anything to make sure that there was a fair and respectable collective agreement.
The strike involved around 250 employees at Windsor's Salt Ojibwe mine, evaporation facility, and business offices. The workers hit the picket lines on February 17th over complaints the company was trying to contract out unionized positions. Nesbitt says the new 5-year deal involves wage and benefit increases for all 3 Unifor bargaining units. Now, over the course of the 6-month strike, there were accusations of what the union calls scab labor. There was also obstruction of vehicles and even an allegation of physical assault. Windsor Salt was acquired by the U.S.-based private equity firm Stone Canyon Industries in 2021. Nesbitt says Unifor intends to maintain a working relationship with the company. Well, as that strike ends, there's potential for the start of another, one in a different industry. Unifor says members at all 3 big automakers in Canada voted to walk off the job. That's only if they can't get new collective agreements in the coming months. Unifor says its members at Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and Stellantis all voted between 98 and 99% in favor of the strike mandate. The vote took place over the weekend amid a pause in bargaining talks. The current batch of collective agreements covers 18,000 workers. Those are set to expire before midnight on September 18th. Unifor says its bargaining committees are focused on improving pensions and increasing wages. They're also looking at securing good union jobs in a future set to be dominated by electric vehicles. In the U.S., members of the United Auto Workers Union have also handed down a strike mandate. Well, Ontario's education minister is pushing teachers' unions to agree to a deal to avoid any potential strikes. On Friday, the union representing secondary school teachers tentatively said yes. Lorenda Redekop has more on where things stand with 3 other unions.
So, hi everyone.
The education minister headed back to school today, just over a week before students will be back in class. And he's putting the pressure on teachers' unions that are still working on their next contract.
And we're urging the other unions to move quickly so that we can conclude negotiations. As I've said before, this should not take long.
On Friday, the Union for High School Teachers, the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, agreed to the arrangement.
Accept a proposal to resolve bargaining with the Ford government through a process that could include binding interest arbitration.
It would take a strike threat off the table for 60,000 workers, though bargaining would continue. Any outstanding issues as of October 27th would head to arbitration. Now the education minister is asking the 3 other teachers' unions to make a similar agreement.
To sign this deal that will keep our kids in school.
The 3 remaining teachers' unions already said Friday they're not interested. They represent elementary teachers, English Catholic teachers, and those in the French system. CUPE represents education workers who aren't teachers. It already agreed to its next contract. CUPE's president doesn't believe arbitration would have worked for them.
While it may improve wages, it does not address working conditions. And those are some key issues that needed to be addressed and were addressed in our collective agreement that was freely negotiated. I think any time that you have a choice, you should always try for a freely negotiated collective agreement.
The Union for English Catholic Teachers released a statement reiterating that binding arbitration is not something it can consider right now. It called on Minister Lecce to do more talking at the bargaining table and less talking in the media. It and the other 2 teachers' unions all have bargaining scheduled in the next 2 weeks. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
A number of Ontario First Nation chiefs are speaking out against the government's plan to develop parts of the Greenbelt.
There are many more areas to develop that don't touch on significant lands.
First Nations do stand with Ontarians who are opposed to this.
The chiefs say they were not consulted on the land swap that involves land on their territory. They add the deal violates the Williams Treaties that was settled in 2018. The chiefs are asking for a meeting with the Premier. The mayor of Hay River in the Northwest Territory says fire is on the town's doorstep, and the weather is making the fight against the flames more difficult. CBC's Megan Roberts, who left the area due to an evacuation order, reports from Edmonton.
Eyes are on Hay River as wildfire once again threatens the community. It is dangerously close to the town's airport, to the town center. It's even closer to West Point First Nation, and right now conditions are not in firefighters' favor. There is a heat warning in the region with temperatures between 29 and 35 degrees. That is more than 10 degrees above normal for this time of year. Layered on top of that, there's an air quality statement for smoke. That reduces visibility, and that makes it harder for firefighters to get in the air and survey the area and fight the fire using aircraft.
Slightly lighter winds expected to come, 5 to 10 kilometers an hour sustained, gusting kind of 15 to 20. So a little bit less than those gusty 45 kilometer an hour winds that we've been seeing. Those hot temperatures for sure are going to be something that could be a challenge today. But just as we have every single day that we've been fighting this fire, we're going to be putting everything into pushing back on that.
There are more than 200 people assigned. That includes 12 helicopters, air tankers, and almost 24 pieces of heavy equipment. Now, those crews were able to keep the fire back using ignition operations. Those are controlled and purposefully set burns that help guide the fire where firefighters want it to be, and support from the air is also instrumental in this fight. Now, all that effort meant no structures were lost on Sunday, which was another tough day for crews. And that is the goal in this fight, protecting the communities, protecting things that people value. There has already been loss in this region. This is the second time this year that Hay River and the nearby Katlo-Deche First Nation have had to flee wildfires. Earlier this season, more than a dozen buildings were destroyed by fire on the Katlo-Deche First Nation. So some in the community have already lost their homes, and crews are doing everything they can right now to make sure that doesn't happen again. Megan Roberts, CBC News, Edmonton.
A new federal report has some dire warnings about the rise of ransomware. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity says organized cybercrime poses a threat to Canada's national and economic security. It also says Russia almost certainly helps cybercriminals operate with near impunity. Catherine Tunney reports.
If you want to hear about the damage caused by cybercrime, listen to someone from Newfoundland and Labrador.
Everybody knows somebody who had very significant things that were canceled.
In 2021, a ransomware attack plunged the province's healthcare system into chaos, delaying thousands of appointments and procedures.
I had a couple of family members undergoing a couple of different kinds of cancer treatments at the time.
Today, Canada's Cyber Intelligence Agency issued a stark warning, saying ransomware isn't just a concern.
It is a national threat because it not only it impacts schools, it impacts hospitals, it impacts critical infrastructure that can in turn have devastating impact on citizens, everything from energy to potentially other sectors of critical infrastructures.
Today, officials also named and shamed one country in particular.
It's no secret that some of these cybercriminal organizations are being harbored in Russia, and Russia's maybe turning a blind eye to them.
Officials warned that criminals are increasingly partaking in what's called big game hunting, targeting critical infrastructure and essential services in hopes of big payouts from desperate victims. So far, hackers have gone after municipalities in Canada, including an attack in 2020 that knocked the city of St. John's systems offline. A ransomware group went after Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital last year, triggering a code gray, signifying a system failure. Individuals are being hit by cybercrime too. More than $500 million was stolen from Canadians last year. The RCMP says that number is likely higher.
So, we think that could be multiplied by 10.
The RCMP says it is trying to go after international criminals. Meanwhile, cyber experts stress that prevention is key, urging those running critical infrastructure to invest now to secure up-to-date systems, or perhaps pay big later. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
60 years ago today, Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. A Windsor woman was in the crowd that day. Lana Talbot was just 18 when she traveled to Washington to be a part of that historic moment. She spoke to CBC's Windsor Morning about convincing her mother to let her go to Washington. The promise, though, she wouldn't go near the steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
I know she wasn't for me going, but she said, all right, I'll let you go as long as you promise me you will not go to that march. She said because Washington, D.C. was a powder keg. If anything broke out, say the Klan was there, But she said no. I said, okay, I promise. I put my fingers behind my back, and I crossed them, and I told her, I won't go. But she knew I would be there. I say this here, I had no idea. This is where I was going to be. And the rest is history. How about that? And today I sit here in 2023, 60 years later, saying, how did I get there?
I have a dream that one day.
Well, it's a beautiful night out there tonight, and I think this time it's sticking around. We've got more details coming up after the break. Well, Florida is bracing for another hurricane.
Tropical storm Idalia continues to gather strength. It will become a hurricane today, and it is forecast to reach landfall as a major hurricane, a Category 3.
DeSantis says the storm could make landfall in the northern Big Bend area where the Panhandle transitions into the peninsula. Meteorologists expect it to hit Wednesday. U.S. President Biden has approved an emergency declaration for the state. Voluntary evacuation orders have already been issued in Tampa. Officials have been giving out sandbags to help residents prepare for the storm. Well, Colette, it looks like some not so nice weather down south, but I snuck a little peek at the weather forecast here before the show. And for what feels like the first time like this summer, is it fair to say we have some kind of consistent, nice, sunny weather coming our way?
Yeah, we do. We have one little blip in here, Meg, that I'll tell you about. I'll go into detail about. But other than that, yeah, you know, we never reached 30 degrees in August. We still have a few days left, but I'm not expecting it. Yet I think Windsor will in September. That's just looking how it's going. We hit 29 degrees back on the 20th, but some of that heat will be building, especially as we approach the holiday weekend. I do just want to go into a little more detail what's happening in the tropics. We have a lot of snowbirds and folks with interest in Florida, and it's going to be beyond that too, the impact. I'll point out, first of all, Hurricane Franklin, which actually intensified to a Category 4. Just the outskirts of that could have an impact on Atlantic Canada. It's looking like the track should hold it mostly to the south, so that's good. And then where I want to take your attention is to Idalia. So expected to be strengthening to hurricane strength likely this evening, shortly. But then after that, continuing to build to a Category 3. You know, the water temperatures here in the Gulf are 30, 31 degrees in there, and there's depth to it as well, to that heat. So a lot of fuel for this system. And then into Wednesday morning is perhaps when it is going to make that landfall and push it across the peninsula. So hurricane warnings, storm surge warnings, they could be seeing over 12 feet of storm surge in some of these areas, and tropical storm warnings. All right, now I'll bring it back home to us and talk about how we, yes, have nice dry conditions tonight. High pressures in place tomorrow as well to begin the day, but it's that system just to the north that we'll see having an impact as we get towards the latter part of the day tomorrow, and I mean evening hours. So things look good in the morning through the afternoon, then the clouds will start to roll in. We do get into not only some rain showers, but yes, the chance for a few localized heavier downpours in here with some embedded thunderstorms. Once the front goes through, we'll have some windy conditions and a bit of a cool down. But again, high pressure will build in. It will clear our skies off. Just have some patience into Wednesday, and we'll get rid of that, and then those temperatures will be going up. Windsor hasn't been reporting, but I was just looking at Harrow, 22 degrees. The high today was 23. That's after a cool morning of 11.6 for our low. Not much humidity. That will be building towards the holiday weekend. So tonight, even cooler than last night, 10 degrees. Tomorrow morning, we'll start to heat things up with sun up and getting up to 13, and then 26 in the afternoon. The showers are in the overnight period. Then we get into clearing for Wednesday, and then look at that string of days. And again, it doesn't hurt, Meg, that it's a holiday weekend we're heading to.
Colette, I'm still reeling at the beginning of the forecast. We haven't reached a day over 30 degrees in August?
We haven't reached 30 degrees, so 29 degrees the high for Windsor on the 20th. Yeah, much of southern Ontario has gone through in August, and again, there's still a few days, but we probably, without seeing one, we're probably going to get there, Meg, at the beginning of September.
Well, you know what? September is always nice here, so we'll look forward to that.
There it is. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
Two things that probably shouldn't be mixed. Gravy, and I can't believe I'm saying this, wrestling. Coming up, we introduce you to an event that you may find intriguing or rather disgusting. A totem pole from British Columbia is about to be delivered back to its rightful owners. The artifact is being returned to the Niska people after spending nearly a century on display at the National Museum of Scotland. Members of the First Nation are in Edinburgh to help prepare for the return of the 11-meter totem pole. Researchers say it was taken by an anthropologist without consent in 1929 and sold to the museum. The pole is believed to have been carved around 1855. It'll be packed and flown back to BC by the Royal Canadian Air Force next month. This marks one of the first times a British museum has returned an artifact to North American Indigenous people. Wrestling is about pitting your physical strength against a rival and hopefully tasting victory.
We're going to get down. We're going to get dirty. World Gravy Wrestling, baby!
I bet you never thought these two could go together, but yes, that is gravy wrestling, where the first rule is to prepare the gravy. It's then poured into the ring, and the wrestlers in fancy dress wade in and fight. Competitors take turns 2 at a time in the gravy-filled pit. It's all in good humor and for a good cause. The event helps raise money for the local hospice. Now, some will go home with a championship trophy, and for the rest, well, it's just gravy. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.